My roommate's boyfriend keeps harassing me and I don't know how to tell her. Disclaimer is not my story time on Instagram. My roommate and I have been living together for 2 years now. Now, I wouldn't call her my best friend, but we are very close. We don't really talk about intimate things, but at the end of the night, she's always there and we usually have dinner together. Not really close to my family, so to me, it's important that she's there every single night. But here's where things get really shitty. Her and I both got boyfriends around the same time. I met my boyfriend through a friend and he is the sweetest, purest thing ever. This man cries at every single movie, but he travels a lot for work, so he's usually not there. Now, my roommate's boyfriend, he's a personal trainer and I'm pretty sure he takes steroids because he's always angry. Should I say aggressive? His behavior became super obnoxious to me right away. As soon as he would come over to the apartment, he would start saying things like, "Babe, your roommate is so hot." Like, he would say that about me to my roommate. Of course, she tried to laugh it off, but I know it bothered her. One day, he even started joking about how he was gonna come into my room one night while I was asleep. Obviously, I did not find this funny. That's when I asked him to leave the apartment. He got so mad, he called me a bitch in front of my roommate and slammed a drawer. Do you think my roommate stood up for me? No. Part 2 is up. My roommate's boyfriend keeps harassing me and I don't know how to tell her. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's not me on Instagram. After he called me a bitch and left the apartment, I was terrified. First off, this guy is 6'2" and he's built like a truck. He's like pure muscle. So when he's yelling in my face and slamming drawers, of course I'm terrified. But my roommate does nothing. But it gets worse. 2 hours after he left, he sends me a text message saying, "Fuck you." And then he sends me a picture of him with his tongue out, giving me the middle finger. I got up to show it to my roommate, but that's when she actually asked to talk to me. She sat me down on the couch and she started telling me how he's such a good man, how she's never been able to find anybody like him. Then she asked me if I could just try to get along with him. He even started crying and it broke my heart. So I decided to let it go. But the next time this guy came over, once again, he started playing super loud music. I came out of my bedroom because I was trying to work and I asked him nicely to turn it down. At this point, my roommate was showering, so it was just him and me in the living room. But then he gets up from the couch and walks slowly towards me, looking me up and down. That's when he says, "You wish you had a guy like me." I turned around and tried to walk back to my room, but he grabbed my arm and turned me around. Then he grabbed my face and tried to kiss me. I actually gagged. That's when he said to me that I was just playing and that I actually want him. The whole time he was squeezing my arm so hard, I finally got away and went into my bedroom. And that's when he sent me a picture of his thing. I literally almost died. I walked out and kicked him out again. This time he didn't put up a fuss, but now I don't know how to tell my roommate. What the heck am I gonna do? Am I the asshole for dating the ex of somebody I know? Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on my Instagram. Little backstory. I'm 27 and I have never wanted a relationship before up until now. Now, my mom has had a very good friend for about 20 years. This friend of my mom's has a daughter. I've only ever met this girl maybe twice. Back when I was 12 and 15. She follows me on Instagram, which I do not follow her back. But even though she follows me, I never see her liking my posts, never replies to my stories or ever interacts with me. Which is why I don't follow her back. My mom and her mom have always wanted us to become friends, but there's a reason why we haven't become friends. She's always given off a mean girl energy, like that fake friend that's really envious of you. Yeah, so I stayed away from her. Her and I don't have the same circle of friends, but we have a friend in common. Let's call this friend Valerie. Valerie invited me to a party and I showed up. At the party, Valerie was like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to this guy who's had a crush on you for years." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she said that he had met me at a party 5 years before. Apparently he doesn't have social media, so I don't even know what he looks like. So she introduced me to this guy and we hit it off instantly. We had really good fun and he asked me for my number, so I gave it to him. A few weeks later, we go on a couple of dates. He asked me to be his girlfriend, but I say no because I'm not ready for that. Then guess who crawls into my text messages? My mom's friend's daughter. Her message reads, "It's my feelings that you would ever consider dating somebody who I dated. He and I have deep history. How dare you? I'm just gonna have to speak to your mother about this." I sent screenshots over to the boy, and he told me that they went out once, and that yes, they did hook up that one time. But apparently she's never left him alone. Then this girl gets even crazier. Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for dating the ex of somebody I know? After she sent me her text message telling me that she was hurt by the fact that I was dating her ex, I asked the guy I'm dating how long they dated for, and he told me that they only went out once. Yep, you got that right. And after that one date, this girl decided that this guy had to be her soulmate and that they needed to get married. Once a week for the past 4 weeks, this girl has been sending me messages asking me to leave him. By the way, it's not like she's contacting him asking him to leave me. She's accusing me of being a homewrecker. They literally went out once and hooked up. Okay, but here's a crazy thing. This girl showed up to my apartment 4 days ago, and I let her in because I was trying to be nice. She came into my apartment and literally started looking through my drawers. She even grabbed my underwear and sniffed them. As she's rummaging through my things, I call her mom and I put her on speaker. That's when her mom starts yelling at her to leave me alone. And the whole thing was pretty funny to me. As she's leaving my apartment, she turns around and tells me that I need to be careful. And the look on her face was scary. The guy and I kept going out. A month later, he asked me to be his girlfriend again and I said yes. And then the girl found out. Once again, she tries to come to my apartment, but this time I don't let her in. She's banging on my door. Mind you, it's 3 a.m. My neighbor calls the cops and so do I. Finally, a police car arrives. That's when this girl tells the cops that I stole a purse from her. A purse that she had seen in my apartment. Tell the cops that I'm not letting them in unless they have a warrant. Then the cop literally pushes the door open and tells me that he needs to come in. Apparently, the cop believes her. He comes into my closet and finds the purse. Start calling my sister who's a lawyer and they finally leave. A few days later, I find out that this girl hired the guy. He wasn't even a cop. So they literally came into my apartment and stole a purse. Now I'm really scared. Is this guy even worth the whole drama? What should I do? Story time about how my ex-husband married my mother. Disclaimer, it's not on Storytime, it's on Instagram. My husband and I divorced about a year ago. Little backstory. When my husband and I were together, we didn't really have infidelity problems. We mostly had financial problems, and we just didn't agree on having kids. I definitely did not want kids and he wanted kids. Anyway, we ended up getting divorced after 2 years of being married. Now, when he and I were married, him and my mom always got along super well. More than your average son-in-law, mother-in-law. Of course, this always made me happy. My husband just made her laugh a lot, and they would even sometimes go and have dinners together or just get drinks together. Exactly a year after he and I got divorced, towards the end of my marriage with my husband, he confessed to me that he is very attracted to older women. He even joked about how he might get with my mom after he divorced me. I thought it was funny, we both laughed. So fast forward exactly a year later. My mom invites me and my siblings over to her house for dinner. Suddenly, my ex-husband comes out of the kitchen and they both announce that they are getting married. And then they start tonguing each other. The worst part is that a few days before, I told my mom that I was missing my ex-husband. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my mother is marrying my ex-husband. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's on my Instagram. I had just told my mom that I was missing my ex-husband and that I might text him. No wonder she didn't reply, because 2 weeks later they're announcing that they're getting married. As he's making out with my mom in front of her kids, in front of me, I get up from the table and I leave. At this point, I'm still not over my ex-husband. Yes, we both agreed to get a divorce, but the more time I spent away from him, the more I realized that maybe I did want kids, and that he was the perfect person to do it with. Well, at this point, I have nothing else. My ex is marrying my mom. Basically, everyone followed me into the kitchen. That's when I just let it rip. I told my mom that she was the worst mom in the world, and that I had told her 2 weeks before that I was missing my ex-husband. That's when my ex-husband looks at my mom and says, "Is that true?" My mom looks at him and says, "Yes, it's true." Then he turns to me and says that he's sorry, but he's no longer in love with me, and that the one he wants to be with is my mother. My siblings and I were all really upset, so we decided to leave. Once I get home, I get a text from my ex-husband asking to meet up with me. Comes over to my apartment, and as soon as he comes in, he tries to kiss me. I couldn't resist and I kissed him back. Part 3 is up. When my ex-husband grabbed me and just started making out with me, I couldn't resist it. When we finally finished making out, he tells me that he's still gonna marry my mother. I asked him why, and he said that he was marrying her because she really needed him. He kept saying things like, she's a lonely woman, he's getting older, she needed someone to take care of her. Mind you, I have 4 siblings and me who literally are always there for my mother. I have never left this woman alone a day in her life. That's when I started remembering something. A few years ago, he had a friend who married an older woman, and that basically he became her sugar baby. Then I realized that around this time, he had gotten fired from his job. Then I accused him of wanting to become a sugar baby. He got so angry he left my apartment. Then I get a call from my mother. Guess what my mom says? She said that she's willing to support him because he gives her everything she needs. She even told my brothers and sisters that we could only come to her house if we are invited. My ex-husband blocked me, trying to convince my mom to block all of us. Because of this, they got into a huge fight. My ex-husband came back to me again, but I said no. What the heck should we do? Story time about how my boyfriend is abusive to his parents. What should I do? Disclaimer, not my story time, it's on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 11 months. Here's a little backstory. We both work at the same company and live very far from our parents. I try to go home once a month since my parents are only 2 hours away from me. His parents live in a different country. For that reason, I haven't met his parents. But he's met my parents and he's been completely respectful and really nice to them. So I never suspected that he could be abusive to his parents. So here's what happened. We flew over to his parents and they are very rich. His mom is an interior designer and their house is phenomenal. His dad owns a couple of businesses, and together they are very wealthy. His parents went to pick us up at the airport, and everything was fine until we got to their house. They decided to give me a tour of their ginormous mansion. That's when I noticed that my boyfriend was being kind of rude to them. Every time they would ask me a question, he would answer and be like, "Duh, she likes pizza." He even asked his mom to stop asking stupid questions. I stopped him in his tracks, and in front of his parents, I said, "Why are you being rude to your parents?" The look on his parents' face was of shock, and that's when I realized that they had never disciplined him. Then it got worse. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend is abusive to his parents. Disclaimer, is not my story time, I said on Instagram. The look on his parents' face when I called him out for being rude to them was complete shock. After they gave me the tour of the house, we decided to sit down for dinner. They are so rich that they have their own chef. That's when the chef comes out and starts serving all the food. And as soon as my boyfriend sees what they served, he grabs his glass of water and bangs it against the table. He looks at both of his parents and says, "What the fuck is wrong with you both?" The color from their faces drain. That's when they said, "I'm sorry, we didn't know he was gonna make this." The chef decided to make a really fancy meatloaf. Apparently, apparently he hates meatloaf. Then he said, well, tell him to make something else. His mother gets up and runs to the kitchen and asks the chef to make him a burger, because that's his favorite food. Which, by the way, I never even knew that. He always told me his favorite food was Indian. His mom comes back from the kitchen, then he looks at me and says, you don't have to eat that shit if you don't want to. I told him that he was being a brat and that I'd be happy to eat the meatloaf. His parents look at me and smile. My boyfriend just gets up from the table and runs away. Can you believe I had to chase after him? Part 3 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend is abusive to his parents. What should I do? Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. That's when my stupid boyfriend runs away from the dinner table. So of course I have to chase him. And of course I'm angry at this point. I ask him why he's being so rude to his parents. Then he literally denies that he just did anything. His words were, you're reading too much into it. My parents are stupid anyway. I looked at him and I said, do you not see the mansion we're standing in? How did 2 stupid people manage to build this mansion, 4 businesses, and put you through school? He rolls his eyes at me and says, Jesus Christ, you sound like my parents. I told him that he was a privileged rat. You see, I come from a family where we don't have chefs, and we don't have millions of dollars, or a mansion. So I appreciate everything my parents did for me. I went back to the dining room and I told his parents it was nice to meet them, but that I could no longer be with their son. That's when his mom started begging me not to leave. It was hard, but I called an Uber and I went home. My boyfriend's been begging me to get back with him. He's trying really hard too. His parents are even offering to pay my student loans. I'm honestly confused now. What should I do?